Have you ever been mid-sentence, right in the middle of a thought that finally started to make sense in your own head, and someone just cuts you off? Not rudely, not even meaning to. They just start talking. And you sit there, sentence hanging in the air like a dropped call, wondering what just happened to it. We usually chalk this up to bad manners, rude people, impatient people, people who think their thoughts matter more than yours. But here's the twist. Interrupting almost never comes from arrogance. It comes from something much closer to anxiety. Let's slow down for a second and actually look at what's happening inside the brain of a chronic interrupter, because it's stranger and more human than you'd think. Picture your mind as a kind of stage. When someone else is speaking, your brain is supposed to sit quietly in the audience, watching, listening, letting the scene play out. But for some people, that stage feels crowded. A thought shows up mid-conversation, bright and urgent, practically shouting, pick me, and their brain doesn't have a great filing system for hold that thought for later. Psychologists call this poor inhibitory control, which is really just a fancy way of saying the brakes on their thinking are a little weaker than most people's. It's the same mechanism that makes some of us blurt out a joke before checking if it's appropriate, or admit something too honest at exactly the wrong dinner party. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Interrupting isn't always about ego. Sometimes it's about fear. Fear of forgetting. You know that feeling when a brilliant thought crosses your mind and you're terrified that if you don't say it right now, this instant, it'll vanish forever, like trying to hold smoke? For people wired with high working memory anxiety, silence isn't peaceful, it's dangerous. Waiting means losing the idea. So they leap in, not because they don't respect you, but because their brain is whispering, say it now or lose it forever. It's less, I matter more than you, and more, I'm terrified this thought is a shooting star and I only get one shot. There's also a cultural layer we rarely talk about. In some households, conversation is basically a contact sport. Voices overlap, people talk over each other with love, and silence is read as disinterest rather than respect. So when that same person walks into a quieter, more turn-taking culture, they're not being arrogant, they're playing a game with rules nobody explained to them. Linguist Deborah Tannen actually studied this exact phenomenon, showing that what one group experiences as enthusiastic engagement, another experiences as domination. Same behavior, wildly different meaning, depending on the room you learned to talk in. And then there's the anxious interrupter, the one who cuts in not because they're excited, but because silence itself feels unbearable. Think about the last time a conversation went quiet for just 2 or 3 seconds. Did it feel comfortable, or did it feel like the air had gotten heavier? For some people, that pause is loaded with imagined judgment. Are they bored of me? Did I say something wrong? Am I taking up too much space? Rather than sit in that uncertainty, they fill it. Talking becomes a kind of emotional life raft, something to hold on to so the silence doesn't swallow them. It's not selfishness, it's self-soothing, dressed up as conversation. And there's a simpler, almost charming explanation hiding underneath all of this: enthusiasm without a translator. Some people interrupt because your story genuinely, honestly excites them so much that their brain starts building the ending before you finished the middle. It's like watching someone so hyped about a movie that they start acting out the plot twist before the trailer's even over. Annoying, sure, in the moment, but it's also a strange, backwards compliment. You said something interesting enough to short-circuit their patience. Now, here's the part that might surprise you. Interrupting in small doses isn't even always a flaw. Some conversational overlap is actually a sign of connection, not disconnection. Researchers studying conversational rhythm have found that certain interruptions, the kind where someone jumps in to agree, to finish your sentence because they're right there with you, to say, yes, exactly, function less like a wall and more like a high five. Your brain synchronizes with theirs so tightly that the line between your thought and their thought briefly blurs. That's not rudeness, that's rapport moving faster than turn-taking rules can keep up with. So maybe the real question isn't why do people interrupt, but what is my nervous system doing in the half second before I speak?
If you're the interrupter, this isn't a life sentence of being labeled rude. It's an invitation to notice the flicker before the words come out. The fear of forgetting, the discomfort with silence, the excitement you haven't learned to pace yet. And if you're the one who keeps getting cut off, maybe it helps to know that most of the time, it was never about you being unimportant. It was about someone else's brain trying, clumsily, to hold on to something before it slipped away. We spend so much energy trying to fix the habit of interrupting without ever asking what it's protecting. Underneath almost every interruption is a small, very human fear of forgetting, of silence, of being invisible in a conversation. Once you see it that way, it's hard to stay annoyed. It becomes almost tender, this idea that even our worst conversational habits are just our nervous systems trying to keep us connected to each other, badly, imperfectly, but trying all the same. So next time someone jumps in before you finish your sentence, or you catch yourself doing it to someone else, pause for a second. Ask yourself what that urge was really about. And if this made you rethink a habit, either yours or someone you love, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more of these deep dives into the strange, quietly beautiful mechanics of human behavior, stick around. There's a lot more going on inside us than we ever give ourselves credit for.